70 first cousins, and I didn't know anybody in my school. In the schools I went to, I didn't know anybody who was related to me who had a peanut allergy or a food allergy. And, you know, I have 7 kids, and 5 of them have allergies. And other issues that afflict their generation. And I saw this explosion in chronic disease, and was wondering why nobody, no doctors, no public officials, that our public health officials are not paying attention to it. And, you know, when I was a kid, my uncle was president, we had a chronic disease rate of about 3%. We spent 0 on chronic disease nationally. Today, the chronic disease rate is 60%. And we are spending $1.3 trillion. And it's the fastest growing budget item in the federal budget. It's growing 2% faster than the economy. You know, when I was a kid, a typical pediatrician would see 1 case of diabetes in his lifetime, juvenile diabetes, over a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 38% of our teens are diabetic or pre-diabetic. It's, so 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is afflicted, and we're spending $1 trillion on diabetes alone. And autism rates in 1970, there was a series of studies around that period. The largest epidemiological study in history of mankind was done in the state of Wisconsin. They looked at 900,000 kids in Wisconsin, and they found 3 kids who had autism. And they were looking specifically for autism. And today, the incident rate at that time was 0.7 per 10,000, so less than 1 in every 10,000 kids. And there are a lot of other studies that supported that, that validated that. Today, we released a month ago new figures that are 1 in every 31 American children. And it's actually probably much worse than that, because the data, CDC's data is assembled state by state. And some states have very poor collection systems. California, which has the best collection system of any state, is 1 in every 19 kids, 1 in every 12.5 boys. This is an apocalypse. And the same is true, that's just 2 diseases, diabetes and autism. And then you look at, there's hundreds and hundreds of autoimmune diseases that started around 1989. The EPA was asked by Congress to tell us what year did the autism epidemic begin. They said it's a red line, 1989. So something happened in that period that changed the way that Americans, that dramatically impacted our health. It's existential for our country. Not only the cost, we pay 2 to 3 times more for health care than any of the European countries, and we have the worst health outcomes of any country in the world. We literally have the sickest population in the world. Our 80%, 8 out of every 10 American kids cannot qualify for military service. The teenagers in America now have sperm counts that are 50% of what 65-year-old men have. They have testosterone levels that are half of what 65-year-old men have. And so this is existential for our country. And, you know, you ask about kind of, you know, what happened. When I started talking about these, I was talking about it for 20 years, and there was an army of mothers who came out of the woodwork because they had those concerns about their kids. And I've kind of made it now, you know, my life mission to figure out what's happening and then to eliminate those. You know, a lot of it is because of our food. That's the primary. Genes don't cause epidemics. They may provide a vulnerability, but you need an environmental toxin. And we know what it is, and primarily it's sugar and ultra-processed foods. And in the countries, I was talking with some of the Democratic senators yesterday and talking about this. You know, in Japan, In the United States, the obesity rate was 3%. And when I was a kid, I was a 10-year-old boy when my uncle was president. And it's over 50% today. In Japan, it was 3% in 1960, and it's 3% today. And it's because they don't allow processed foods into their schools. They have cooks, they give the kids really good food. In China, 20 years ago, there was virtually no diabetes. Today, 51% of the adult population is pre-diabetic or diabetic, and it's because they allowed 20,000 fast food joints to be built in China, and they started mass importing American processed food. We are poisoning our children. We're mass poisoning this generation of children, and the costs are now, it's bankrupting the state. Those of you who are governors, most of you are paying about 30% of your budget for Medicaid. And it's bankrupting us, and there's no end in sight to that vertical hockey stick graph line. And the only way, for years, Republicans and Democrats have been talking about how to reorganize the healthcare system, whether it should be private insurance or whether it be single payer or a public-private hybrid. But all of those ideas are like moving deck chairs around on the Titanic. The ship is going down. The only way that we solve this problem is by ending the chronic disease epidemic. And we're seeing now these extraordinary initiatives from the states to do that. And, in Tennessee, you've got cell phone regulations in the schools, which are really, really important. You've applied for a SNAP waiver, and this is something that I would urge every governor to do. We spend $405 million a day on food stamps. 18% of that goes to soda and candy. So we are giving this population, the poorest population in our country, diabetes, and we're paying for it again in Medicaid. And if you want to drink a Coke, you're in America, you ought to be able to drink one. You can make that choice. But the federal taxpayer should not be paying for it. And if you're doing that, it looks like cheap food, but bad food is not cheap. It's much more expensive in the long run.